Welcome back to the Goddess Guide to Natural Birth Control. Today we're going to be talking about the Fertility Awareness Method. The Fertility Awareness Method is very foundational to our natural birth control practice. This is the heart and the soul of the practice, and practiced alone, this method is scientifically proven to be 99.6% effective in preventing pregnancy. So it's very powerful. It is a way of getting to know our fertility signs and a few simple rules in order for us to be crystal clear about where we are in our cycles and when we can and cannot have unprotected intercourse. So let's get started. The signs that we're looking at in our body are incredible because once you get to know them, it becomes crystal clear where we are in our cycle and what we can and cannot do. So we're first going to be looking at our basal body temperature. This is our temperature taken around the same time every day. We're going to be charting it and looking for a shift. So we'll go more into that in a video on temperature. We're going to be looking at our cervical mucus or our cervical fluid, getting to know that, which moves in a very clear pattern every month. And this will be a very clear sign for us where we're at as well. And then we're going to be getting to know our cervix. So our cervix is like this little nub inside of us. If you stick your finger inside of you, in case you're not familiar with it yet, it's okay. And this is going to be an incredible sign because our cervix itself shifts and changes throughout our cycle and shows us exactly where we're at. So we'll get more into those signs and what they mean, what they are, in their very own little videos. And once we understand our signs, we'll also be working with 4 basic rules of the Fertility Awareness Method. So the first rule is our first 5-day rule. So the first 5-day rule, for starters, is only good, 1, if you're not in a menopausal season, and 2, you have to have had a noticeable temperature shift 12 to 16 days before to know that you actually ovulated in your last cycle. Because sometimes if we're under stress, if we're traveling a lot, changing our life a lot, we may not ovulate, but we may still menstruate. We may still bleed, which is not a true menstruation, but this could really throw us off. So we have to have seen that we had this noticeable temperature shift in our cycle that was previous, and then we're safe the first 5 days of our menstruation. Now, if our cycle is shorter than 27 days, then we're actually only safe for the first 3 days of our menstruation. This is because with a shorter cycle, we could ovulate earlier and not be aware of it. And with this, we could have sperm living inside of us. Even going from menstruation to ovulation and having some wetness in between could technically keep sperm alive, and we could end up getting pregnant. So, but in general, if you have a normal length of cycle and you had a temperature shift the month before, you can consider yourself safe for the first 5 days of your blood. The second rule is our dry day rule. So essentially, with the Fertility Awareness Method, we are really paying attention to the time of our cycle, which starts our first day of menstruation up until ovulation. This is where we really need to understand what's going on, because this is the window in which we can become pregnant. And so the dry day rule tells us that we're safe for intercourse on the end of any dry day. And this is because when we have a dry yoni environment, sperm is not able to survive. It needs at least a little bit of cervical fluid to be able to stay alive for up to 5 days inside of us. So what you can do to work with this rule is just check inside of you before you have intercourse. And I like to make sure my cervix is also low and closed and firm. So we're safe the first 5 or 3 days, depending on your cycle length. Then we're safe the evening of any dry day leading up to ovulation. You check inside, you make sure you're dry, and your dryness will be like if you were to put your finger inside your mouth like this. You see there's no fluid here, but there is a little dampness because obviously the vaginal environment is a damp place. So then you're safe, like we say, at the end of any dry day. From there, we're going to get to know what's called our peak day. Now, basically throughout your cycle, your cervical fluid will be blood, and then it usually goes to dry or slightly sticky, gummy. From there, it becomes creamy or lotiony. And from there, you get very fertile quality cervical fluid, which is like an egg white. It becomes stretchy. There becomes a lot of it generally. And you have this wetness, not just when you check inside of you, but generally you'll have a wet vaginal sensation, like you wipe and just slides on by, or you walk around, you're feeling juicy. This is when you are very fertile. And so within this pattern, you'll have a very wet day, and then the next day can be totally dry. So what that's telling you is that when you experience that dry day, you know that the day before when you were very wet is what's called your peak day. So from there, you're going to begin counting. You're going to count 4 days. These 4 days need to all be dry. So if you get more egg white on day 2 or day 3, you have to start over again and wait for another dry day. Then you start counting 4 dry days. Why 4 days? Well, we're waiting 4 days because your body could potentially release more than one egg, as in twins, as in triplets. So although the egg can only live inside of us for 24 hours, you may have the possibility of releasing 2 or 3. So that's why we wait 4 dry days after our peak day. And on the night of your 4th day, you're considered safe for unprotected intercourse. And this is safe for the rest of your cycle. So your partner can ejaculate inside of you for the rest of your cycle, and you're totally safe after this. What helps us to be even more clear about this freedom for the rest of our cycle is rule number 4. So rule number 4 is based on our temperature. So we're going to be having a temperature that's like and then it will spike noticeably. And then it will fluctuate, but it will stay in this higher range for the rest of your cycle. So basically, once our temperature has had a noticeable spike, we're going to count 3 days. Now, this is just like with your peak day. If your temperature goes way down again, you're going to count this as a random temperature that spiked, and you're going to look for 3 consecutive days of this risen temperature. So once you've had 3 high temperatures, from there, on the evening of the 3rd day, you're considered safe for unprotected intercourse for the rest of the month. So, why are we waiting a few days with the temperature? It's the same exact concept as waiting for a few days with your cervical fluid, which is that we're waiting just in case an extra egg or 2 were to come, to give them time to disintegrate. So, I like to check before intercourse, as a hack for all of it. When your cervix is low and firm and closed and it's dry, you're really checking if there's any fluid at all, then you're basically safe. This is an extra check that you can always do. But just remember, my sisters, if you're wet, this is a really easy way to remember, if I have fluid going on in my yoni coming up to ovulation, I am fertile, even if it's not this stretchy egg white, because this sperm can live inside of me during this time. So we're going to get into how to work with neem oil and some other gems to empower us to be able to have a bigger window where we can make love without becoming pregnant. But for your basic understanding, let's understand really well these rules. Please watch this video again and again to really get it in your head, that you could understand. And I want you to start tracking. The best way to track, if you do use a smartphone, is, for me, this app that's free. It's called Kindara. You just put in your information. It takes all of a minute a day, and it actually makes a chart for you. You can look back at your past cycles, and as it gets to know you, it will even help predict for you when you're going to menstruate. This can be really helpful in planning your life. And if you're not using a smartphone, if you're not into technology, that is awesome. And I will include for you charting materials that you can just print out, and you'll be able to fill in your chart. You'll be able to know where you're at just the same as if you were charting in your phone. So because coming into practicing the Fertility Awareness Method and practicing natural birth control, this is a whole new way of life. This is a whole new way of thinking. So it's really easy to think, I checked my cervical fluid, I know it. Well, that's awesome, but you must track it to be able to have an accurate and powerful form of birth control. So with natural birth control, you're the one in power. So make sure you're tracking, make sure you're checking your signs. Just when you go to the bathroom, you're developing these new habits of checking your cervix, checking your fluid. I like to check mine like at least twice a day, sometimes more if I want to just make sure before intercourse and I know I haven't ovulated yet. I'm always a little bit more careful checking it before intercourse. And then you're charting your temperature, and these things will show you. So we'll get more into these signs and understanding them more in the coming videos. And I'm so excited for you to get to know your body signs more. And this way we can harmonize more with our body, with our cycle, with our birth control, and really with our being.